Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of this brand new season of the Music4All podcast, created by the Coalition for Music Education in Canada. My name is Alexis Vollant, and I have the honor of hosting the podcast this year. I have the even greater honor of being here with Will Clements. Will is a music educator based in Vancouver, BC. We are so excited to have you today, Will. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me here.
So my first question, can you please introduce yourself, who you are, what your background is, and more specifically, how life brought you to music education?
Wow. How life brought me to music education. Oh my gosh. Okay, well, my father was my band teacher, which immediately always gives this kind of reaction of uh when I tell this to friends, they say, "Oh my, was it embarrassing? Was it awful? What was it like?" And to be honest, it was probably the reason I pursued music education because I was so inspired by being in my father's classroom. And if I could kind of paint a picture, he is like a more than life kind of person. Like he's so excited and is so amazingly unique in the way that he teaches and its approach of connecting with students and being silly and just making life fun. Like just making life fun, these people, right, in your life that just like they just you think of them and they bring you a smile. So having been in his classroom, I really realized how powerful teaching can be when used for good, right? And that really made me launch into a path of first I thought arts. I almost went into filmmaking. I actually applied to two filmmaking colleges, and music was considered the backup. And I ended up going with my gut, did some a degree in jazz studies, and then became a high school choir teacher. And I've been really thrilled with what I've learned along that journey and where that's taken me today. So that's kind of a little bit about my inspiration of how I became a choir teacher.
Awesome. That is an awesome way of coming to music. Obviously, I know you a little bit more than the people who listen are going to know you, but I've always found it so cool for you to come from a more of a jazz background and going into being an educator. I feel like it is a different approach, a different, so to speak, system than the classical background. And yeah, I've always admired that about you as a classical musician speaking.
Oh my gosh, wow. Well, we have so many, I think, interesting stories between us about our journeys and how we've kind of aligned now in our choral paths in certain ways, which is why I love what we do. It's so exciting to me to meet people that have taken a completely different journey or a completely different path, and then you kind of cross paths, right? And that's kind of I feel like where our connections have come together, which is so exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for telling us a bit more about yourself. My second question. Well, I just asked you how life brought you to music, but what has music education brought to your life? What are the challenges, the gifts, and the great moments you'd like to share?
Well, music education as a student has, I feel, given me the tools in order to express myself. And what I mean by that is, when I think about the times that I really struggled, like that, you remember in high school, that first breakup. Oh my gosh. Right? It's like you're holding on to someone, you're like, this is my first person, and I'm gonna be in love with this person forever, and then it breaks into pieces, and the anger comes out, and everybody's upset, and it's an awful time. I'm sure many of your listeners can attest to this. And the teenage angst is so powerful, is so heavy, right? And I'm joking a little bit and poking fun at myself, but uh, when I really felt like I didn't know how to get my feelings out within my heart, right? Like kind of trapped. I went to go write music, and sometimes I didn't know what I was doing, but I learned along the way from my music composition class in high school and some of my band courses. I actually started as a band geek. I wasn't I didn't join choirs until later, turning to the dark side. Um, and I remember setting up this sort of makeshift studio in the band room. My father and my other music teachers were so kind and generous to allow me to explore freely the instruments that were in the room, you know. There was a mutual trust there that was really important for me. Um, and I just started sitting. I had a not an organ, but like a Rhodes keyboard against the wall, hooked up to a Leslie rotating speaker. It's a speaker that's been super quick to give you that woo, woo, woo kind of sound. I was just pulling stuff. This school had been built like something like 60, 70, maybe even 80 years back. So it's this old school that was falling apart, and there were things you could find out of the closet, old drum hardware, kind of just bits and pieces of stuff. And I surrounded myself with these old instruments, including the keyboard and these drums, and I just started recording. And I didn't know really what I was doing, but I was just kind of throwing things together from what I'd been taught from my music composition teacher, Mr. Sykes. Shout out. And I just started bashing things and exploring harmony. And I couldn't at the time tell you what chord I was playing, but I could just express through feeling, right, what sounded like kind of what I was uh, going through. This kind of almost revengeful feeling, you know? And it was so cathartic. It was so helpful for me to have that freedom and trust from my educators and guidance and mentorship that I was able to kind of produce my first song. And I think that was one of the that was the gateway drug for me into exploring how music education can be again like a a tool for good or power for change because it's so transformative within for me within myself, right? It can shift my mood and it can help me process my feelings. So that's my perspective as a student. And I mean, similarly as a teacher, when you see how students get to take the tools that we teach them and use them in new ways and make new concepts and make new sounds, it's so exciting in any context.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. The third question I have for you: what are some stereotypes or preconceived ideas you had about music education in the public system that you either A, were simply wrong about, or B, have taken actions to change if they were true?
Oh my gosh, Alex. When I came out of uh my teaching degree, I was so naive. So I was ripping up all these teachers. I would sit there with my friends and go, I don't like the way these band teachers are running this department, and I don't like the way that, you know, we're just focusing on making our kids trying to sound good and we don't care about how they feel. And like I was terrible. I was totally overcritical of of our systems. And I think that stemmed from not I mean, I had a great experience in high school, but stemming from not understanding the context of where what teachers are going through every day, what where they've come from, what their background is, what their identity is, you know, all these kind of elements that you don't see or maybe you don't see initially. Right? What's that Kamala Harris quote that's going around? We exist in the context of, you know, the coconut tree thing. It's that, right? So I kind of came out naively thinking like if a choir doesn't sound good or a band doesn't sound good, it's the teacher's fault. I also had thought that if the students are not smiling all the time, they're not happy, right? And of course, all these things are not true. None of these things are true because there are so many layers and elements that go into our jobs as educators that take so much weight that are beyond anything that has to do with music, right? Um, I mean, we're organizing events, we're organizing concerts, we're advocate. Some of us are still trying to advocate to keep our jobs, right? So if a teacher is in a position where they're trying to advocate their district or their administration to provide music education in the classroom, of course, that's going to take a huge amount of energy, a huge amount of emotional uh, tolerance, a huge amount of um, support before they've even started their day. So I quickly realized, I've only been teaching. I'm going into my fourth year of teaching, so I think a lot of people would consider me quite green, quite young, quite new to the profession, which I completely agree with because every day that I spent in that school, the more I realize, oh my gosh, even those teachers, and we've all had that teacher, right? At some point where we were like, get me out of this classroom. This person sucks. This person doesn't get me. This person doesn't, right? I mean, I'm seeing you smile because we've all got that person. I have respect now for those teachers that I used to not vibe with, that I used to be frustrated with, that I used to be um, impatient with, because I didn't see everything that goes behind the work. And I'm I I'm hoping that we can start creating a culture of compassion, self-compassion and empathy for each other. Because I think what we do is really hard. I really believe that. I think anyone that's in front of a crowd as their job, it's mortifying. And I'm a people's person. I'm a total people's person. I love to connect. But it is so demanding to be looking after and making sure that you're always outwardly connecting with so many amazing individuals all the time. And I feel very privileged because I get to work in a community that's very supportive of the arts and very um, that holds a high standard of what they expect their music department at our high school to deliver, which means that we get a lot of support with resources and a lot of support with upper administration in our community, um, which is fantastic. But my heart goes out to those teachers that are just trying to make it through the day because sometimes it's just survival, right? It's just trying to um, make it through without losing your mind sometimes. And now that we're about to approach the new school year, that's something I'm holding very deeply in my heart is how to
Mm,
be patient, how to be uh, um, what's the word? I'm like, how to be sustainable, how
mhm,
to be uh, or rather make things sustainable for myself. So important.
mhm. Oh, thank you so much for sharing all of that. You mentioned that you would probably be considered by many as a young green educator. Well, as a young educator, I would like your thoughts on the current generation of music students. What do you think they need in terms of well rounded musical, but not only musical, but also artistic education? What do you think is needed to really complete that entire loop as much as we can?
Yeah, that's such an interesting question. I think in the arts, what I'm noticing, and of course, this is not going to be, I think, observed in every classroom, but I am really lucky because when my students come in through our door of our music department, I don't see them on their phones. I don't see them distracted. I see them desperate to connect, right? And I think that's something really magical about what we do in music education because how lucky are we? from the get-go to not be worrying about what 99% of other teachers are worrying about, which is, are they paying attention? They are so excited to have an opportunity to not just connect with others around the classroom, but to be guided by you, to be mentored by you, to be um, uh, uh, you know, making something happen together. I think we need to start focusing on that and focusing on how we can cultivate more of that excitement, right? And I think, I mean, I'm speaking very broadly right now because I don't want to say that everyone's challenge is the same. But that's what I'm seeing in my limited little bubble right now.
Mhm.
I think what our students really need is an opportunity to explore creativity. I think we have a bit of a um not a what's it not a stigma, but an expectation that music education is a creative uh, uh outlet, which it is, right? But I worry sometimes about how we really try to pigeonhole people into slots or specific roles, right? It's always great to have structure. Structure is so important, and I know I thrive on structure. But there's also a beauty in the ways we can explore music through improvisation or something unexpected or something unique that can only be in the moment. And I think a lot of composers are actually starting to pick up on this and trying to find opportunities for music to be in the moment, right? So my philosophy coming out of college was really like I just want to focus on that aspect, but I think there's a balance. There needs to be structure and there needs to be an opportunity for um, self-expression that is beyond what's on the page, right? So students need an opportunity to play, experiment at any age. And, how can we break out of this mold? How can we make this arrangement ours? What can we add? What do we need to change so that it really truly reflects the identities of the kids in the classroom? And I think we need to be less afraid of editing and changing. I remember my father would all the time, and even if it didn't matter if we were playing a march in band or a beautiful ballad or a beautiful chorale, he would always try to find ways to uh, change elements of the music so that it was exciting for that group of kids. Oh, we have an amazing bassoon player. Okay, let's try to find a way we can bring a bassoon solo into this. And maybe it's not in the music, but maybe we can figure something out. Oh, we have, these amazing percussionists, but there's no percussion part. How about we invent a percussion part? That kind of stuff is so exciting to me because it enhances what we're already being given with the resources we have.
So you're at the very beginning of your career, but throughout your career, what would you like to see change as a music educator? What are some changes you have already seen in your time teaching? And what is your biggest dream as an educator?
Oh my gosh. Okay. I think having worked in a couple schools now, I've really seen the value of harnessing community in the specific ways that it is represented in a school. And what I mean by that is each school has a different flavor, a different tone, and a different way that the community interacts, right? So some schools, for example, love taking photos and making those huge collages that are spread throughout all the hallways so that you physically take these memories and implement them into the fabric, the literal fabric of the school, right? And I've seen that and the power of that. On the other hand, I've seen in now the community that I work with, uh, there's um, a need to be constantly uh, seeing each other on and off site. So like this school, they love to do trips. They love to go out into different communities. We do an elementary school tour at my high school where we take our choir and we go around to all the elementary schools. A for recruitment, but also B for getting an opportunity to connect with the the younger students and share the power of music, right? So I think what I'm hoping to see more in music education is just a willingness to play, right? In whatever way that means. Maybe taking things a little less seriously. And that's something I really want to work on too, is realizing, in music, when the plane goes down, we all walk out without any bruises or any scratches, right? It's almost a relief actually to have a bit of a train wreck sometimes because you learn so much from that. There's so much growth that happens from trial and error. And we were talking a little bit about that off the podcast, but I think those can be if I can learn to embrace a little bit more um, that trial and error process and practice patience and practice empathy. I think for me, that's going to open up a lot of more doors in terms of opportunity, but also really strengthen the connection between me and my students, which is really important to me and why I do what I do. And I invite um, my peers to do the same, where we really try to focus on that connection piece. Of course, everybody's here to make a difference in a student's life, but I think also recognizing what are the strengths of that unique student and how can that be a an asset towards uh, your ensemble, your classroom, your community, um, whatever layer you're looking at in or lens you're looking through.
Thank you so much for sharing that. We're getting close to the end. I have two more questions for you.
Mhm.
First of all, what would you like to say to a music education student on their way to becoming an awesome teacher like you?
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, the first thing I would say is um, you are already awesome individual. You're already awesome. And the reason why you're awesome is because you are already um, on a journey. And who knows, right? I know lots of people who went to do their music teaching degree and then ended up somewhere else. And I think that's cool too. I think that's really cool when people pave their own lane, you know. Um, I think what's really important is it's so easy as a student to be critical. And I was that student. I was the worst, like by far. I was the worst. I would come home and bicker and complain, like I was saying at the beginning of our podcast together. I think it's so important to recognize there's so much more that we don't see, right? We don't know what are the true challenges of uh, a teaching job until you've done it for a couple of years. Then you really start to, after a couple of years, you really start to understand what are the things that are not visible, right? So it's so important to recognize everyone is trying their best, even when it looks like they're not, even when it looks like, maybe someone's best is not good enough. I guarantee if you were to get some take some time to get to know the context a little bit more of that teacher, that ensemble, or that group, there's something to learn. There's something of value to learn. And I try to tell this to my students when we go to a festival. I say, if you go with the mindset of, are we better than X, Y, and Z, choir X, Y, and Z? Are we um, less better than whatever? Then you're missing the whole point of why we're doing this. Every single group, every single student we can learn from. There's something that we're going to cherish and adore about everything we hear when we go see other groups perform. And I really want to see that truly embodied a little bit more across all our musical communities, right? Because I think even if it's not a competition, we kind of create a competition in our mind. We kind of create a simulation of comparison. And I know why we do that, right? Because we're trying to protect our ego, we're trying to protect ourselves, but life is so much more beautiful when you go expecting to learn something from every person you cross paths with. It's truly, right? And it's not easy to do that. Sometimes you're in a bad you're in a bad mood, you didn't have your coffee, you know, and you're grumpy, and that's okay. That's okay. That's you. But um in terms of what I would say to coming back to your question, in terms of what I'd say to a future teacher, I would say it's so important to again just acknowledge your privilege and where you're coming from, and that try to look for the lessons, look for the 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 hints of gold, right? Because they're always there if you look.
Yeah, I back to something we were talking about earlier. I went to a pretty uh, privileged, I would say, high school, and I was very privileged to go there. And the music education was, I think, pretty average in terms of the context of uh, the province and the city that we were in. But most of my musical training was soloistic piano training,
Mhm, mhm.
and with that came a lot of expectation to compete. And although the band at my school, I know that they went to some festivals too, and they had some trips, but I really had nobody to tell me that competition is good. But like you said earlier, we're not going to get bruises going out of this. And I think it took me many years to realize that what was happening to my own self, what was allowing to happen, was not good. And that's when I started to see the importance of music educators. When I came to Vancouver and started my bachelor's degree. Anyway, this podcast is not about me; it's about you. But just to add on to
No,
what
I
you're,
love it. I love it.
just to add on to what you're saying of people like you or other people that we might have to this podcast very soon. People I met. It's so important for kids to be mentored and to be guided by people who have healthy mindsets about competing and what music is really about. And speaking of that, I would like to know who were the people who mentored you. I know you talked about your dad, and that was awesome. um, I was wondering if there was anyone else who was important for you during your training and your career, educators, musicians, artists that have brought you inspiration and guidance. Is there anyone you'd like to share?
Well, I just to start off with, I'd love to just say that's really beautiful. I think what you said, because I think all of us that explore music start with at least for me, I felt like I started with that competition kind of ingrained in me, and it had nothing to do with my father. It had nothing to do with my upbringing. It's just natural. Like I think it's a natural feeling, right? Am I better or worse than Sam? What's his face? Right? Like no, but really, right? Like I think that's natural. And what I love about what you just said, which is so beautiful, is it takes the mentors to show you the more healthier ways of thinking in order to break out of that and start really almost kind of seeing outside yourself in terms of what is harmful and what is helpful. And one of those mentors that really were able to do that for me was this amazing composer. Her name is Jody Prosnick. Everybody's got to Google up this person right now. Jody Prosnick, Jodi space Proznick. She's an amazing jazz bassist, but more than that, she is truly an artist. And I have so much respect for people that are able to be amazing performers and teachers, yes, but at the end of the day, they are an artist, and everything they do is through that lens of self-expression, right? Today, I'm feeling pissed off, right? What can we do today to explore that together? Because they got my Starbucks order wrong again, and the price went up, right? Let's pull out a piece, everyone, that is a little bit got a little bit of, redness in it. And let's figure out what that thing is for us that's going to get us to that next level of deeper understanding of this music, right? Feeding into the current emotional state you're in is very cathartic. And that's something she taught me, I felt, was don't be afraid to go a little bit deeper into how you feel and explore that. It can be kind of fun, right? Almost to kind of act out a little bit um your inner emotional compass. So for me, she's really taught me a lot about what it means to be an artist, what it means to be not just a teacher, but a mentor, and these values that uh, are embedded in the ways in which we teach. Because just a little shift in being more vulnerable and exploring your own curiosity can actually model a lot of that positive feedback you were just talking about. That positive, that sorry, not healthier ways of uh, thinking.
Thank you so much. Will Clement is a music educator and a jazz musician and many other awesome things. Will, thank you for being with us today.
The Alexis.